So I've got a question for you. Do we actually have our first choice as our elected representative? So think about whatever constituency you live in. If you even know who your MP is, would that be your first choice as your person to represent you?
I mean, at this point, my first choice would be Genghis Khan, so no.
Right, so probably not then, but again, do you even know who your MP is?
Yes.
Would he?
No.
No, right, okay, there we go. So, but I mean, the point is, though, that is more or less what we're supposed to have. We're supposed to have the person who best represents you is the person who is your representative. And clearly that is not happening. So that's the starting frame point I want to start for this. Now, I'm going to have to do a little bit of background because, you see, I have been doing some thinking lately about, well, the way that the whole system works. It's a big picture. The first part of my thinking on this was this video that I put out on the Daily channel, which is what's the points of cities. Now, I'm going to try and very quickly cap my argument here because I think it is kind of key. So basically, end of the 13th century, you had a gravitation away from the land being the primary factor of production to capital being the main factor of production. So effectively went from an agricultural-based society to a city-based society where you've got artisans and all the rest of it who merged into industrialists and so on. And it changed the entire system. So under the old system, the two key factors of production was people and land, and that was controlled by the bishops and the lord. So the bishops command loyalty and the lords control land. Now, as you start to move into towns and you get that rise of the artisans, the proto-industrialists, you get the rise of the money lenders, the bankers as they come to be known, you get a new mix, which is going to be, again, people and capital. So again, the controlling class here was politicians who control consent and the banker and the industrialist who controls capital. Okay, and we'd moved to this new system, and what we're seeing now is a new shift from basically capital being the key factor of production to knowledge being the key factor of production in the digital age. Okay, so I'll come back to what I think that tells you. But if you do have capital, what can you do with it? Well, one of the things that you can do with it is you can go to the merch store and you can buy a T-shirt, and then you will have deployed your capital into something useful. So right, anyway, so what's the new model? If I follow this logic, that the key factor of production is the power class, and the people who can command either loyalty or consent or other are the second part of that equation. What does the new governing structure have to look like in a digital age? Well, it's basically you need to control again people and knowledge. But this time it's leverage and knowledge. So it's tech bros controlling the government. We're already seeing that in the United States. Yep. And it is influencers controlling the people because they do. Because when people are thinking,
this is the point of the BBC, right? The BBC, like if you look at it now, the BBC in the 20th century having essentially a monopoly on almost all information that people received.
Well, less and less.
But think about it. Like, so up until what was it, 1995 or something, there were only 3 terrestrial TV channels anyway, and then I think it was like 1990 that Sky came in, but that's a barrier to entry anyway that most people didn't have. And so for about 50 odd years or 60 years in Britain, the BBC had just literally a monopoly on the information that TV watchers would have. That's incredible. That's the sort of thing that the Soviet Union was trying to have.
And essentially they're trying to control consent.
Yeah.
Consent for the industrialist and the banker controlling everything behind the scenes, which they do, and they use media and they use politicians in order to get that. Yeah. So you can see this whole dynamic repeats time and time again. If you're really interested, before the agricultural system, it was just hunter gatherers, and the only factor of production there was people. So is the tribal chief or whatever. But you can see this consistent consistent theme of how power works.
Quick thing on that as well, just to be clear, I agree with your broad analysis of the economy. I think it's worth pointing out that this is a very English analysis you're giving, because from the 13th century onwards, England had a thriving land market. Most places didn't have a thriving land market. Most places, like for example, by at least the 15th or 16th centuries, England wasn't a peasant society and didn't have any peasants.
Yes.
Whereas most countries.
Yes, but I don't concern myself with the foreigners like the French or whatever.
Just to make it clear to people watching.
No,
how does this work with the Russian 19th century peasant commune, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, in the earlier video that I showed, I mean, a key split point was the Black Death. where basically if you're an English peasant, you got more because there was fewer of you, so you were able to collectively bargain for better conditions. You were able to move around, and that's what allowed the formation of the early towns, because people could go and reposition themselves to somewhere else. In Russia, it worked the opposite way around because they were too spread out. The Black Death actually increased the power of the aristocracy.
Really, I didn't
Which
know
then
that.
led to the problems they had later on.
Right.
But moving on with the theme. This is actually something that the wife showed me, because she doesn't use the Twitter, she uses the Facebook.
Yeah. This is the ultimate boomer screenshot.
Yes. But basically, it's
See the reflection of your phone on the screen.
Yes,
You couldn't just take a screenshot.
No, she did this.
Oh, okay, all right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, so she found this thing about some lefty on the Facebook complaining about how this kind of works, and I won't go into it all now because it's a typical wordy blah blah lefty thing. But anyway, he's basically saying if you confuse what Musk is trying to achieve with Doge, and he goes through it all, and he basically says the power is with the PayPal mafia, the tech bros essentially, and they're trying to take over government, and it's this dark MAGA agenda, and they're going to basically get rid of elections and democracy because it's obsolete, and they're going to push this through and all that kind of stuff.
They might create a Quango or something.
Yeah, now my first reaction...
I wish we lived in this kind of world.
Exactly. Right. So my first reaction to this is what I always see when I see a lefty explain a post. If only. Right? Right, but actually, I think he's got a big part of it. I think the thing about the tech bros taking power... That is a real thing. That is really going to happen. And it's consistent with what happened before. When the artisans and the industrialists started to become powerful, they started forming guilds. And that was the basis of the modern power structure that we have today. The capital class came together and created that.
Just a quick minute, that's the entire liberal revolution. It's the bourgeois revolution of middle-class capital-owning people who wanted to break through the feudal social structure that was holding them back.
Exactly.
And that's all that's happening now. Look, we've become powerful in this society.
Yes.
There's no reason we can't break through whatever was inhibiting us before.
Yes, and because they control the key factor of production, it was inevitable that they were going to get that power. Right, and the true breakpoint for this, a little bit of history, was going to be the...
Just noticed another one of his little things there. The strategy is to gut the government via rage, retire all government employees.
Oh, totally.
That's amazing.
I wish.
We need to adopt the rage strategy.
And make the government incapable of operating. Yes, sir.
I think he's right. He's just a little bit early, but actually, I think he's more or less right, and I'm just explaining why. All right, okay. Now, the key breakpoint for when this happened the last time round was going to be the Great Reform Act of 1832. Right. You find that particularly funny, do you, Harry?
No, I'm
right.
just
still sniggering over the last thing.
I'm just feeling the urge to rage right now.
I just love this. Love this to use distraction and chaos to prevent public resistance. Why would there be public resistance? The people looting them on the daily.
Yes.
Like, god damn, man.
I should have given you guys more time on this. Actually,
That's all right.
No, you carry on with the Great Reform Act. All right.
Okay.
All right.
So, Great Reform Act 1832. Parliament has failed us before. Now, why was the Great Reform Act of 1832 so necessary? It's because the parliamentary system that we had was still wedded to the old structure, the landed system. So you had rotten boroughs, you had landed aristocracy who were controlling things and were massively overrepresented. So some of these rotten boroughs, you'd have, so for example, you'd have no parliamentary seats for entire new cities that had merged, or towns that had merged. They'd have no parliamentary representation, but some little village somewhere would have like several MPs, and it would be basically controlled by whoever the landed aristocracy in the area would say, oh yeah, we want that guy.
Right. So there's actually a good example fairly near us. There's an old pre-Norman hill fort called Old Sarum that I went to and visited, and it's very nice and stuff.
Was that a constituency once?
It was.
I think also Cricklade down the road was a rotten borough as well.
Because like literally there were two people living in Old Sarum, something like that. Because the thing was.
Were they both MPs?
Probably, yeah. No, that's probably it actually.
And they voted for each other.
But like there was basically no population in this old ruined Norman, because the Normans built a castle on it. Yeah. But then there was no population there, and yet it still persisted as a Norman fort, as where the aristocrat would have had his seat, but there's no one there. Right, and so it's returning like one or two members of parliament or whatever, and it's like, but it's not a thing.
Yes,
it's a ruin.
Yeah, and almost certainly how that would have worked is whichever
That's exactly it. Like it was Edward the First who, in 1295, gave Sarum the right to return 2 members to the House of Commons. And yet, if you actually went there, it's a desolate ruin, right?
It's a hill.
Yeah, exactly. It's got a ruined castle on it.
It was as deserving of political representation as anywhere else, Carl.
But it was when it was a Norman keep,
obviously.
right?
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah.
So anyway, right. So that in 1830, and think about how long it persisted, right? Because the model effectively changed at the end of the 13th century, and
it's
it wasn't
literally 500 years.
Yeah, until 1832 when they said, okay, we've got to reform this. Now, to be fair, things worked a little bit slower back then. So, but what it effectively was is, like I said, it was the capital class, it was the urban growth, it was the rising middle class. They were all asserting themselves and saying, no, that's not how it works anymore. We're working on a new system. Now we've moved over away from capital to knowledge as being the key thing. And by the way, if anyone doesn't believe me when I say that is a real thing, explain to me why Netflix is a giant company and Blockbuster isn't.
Oh, it's also...
you didn't have to break my heart like that, Dan.
Yeah, but it's also so obviously true, because if you look at the companies that began the internet, most of them don't exist anymore.
Yes.
And yet the new ones are all knowledge-based companies that have used a different technique to employ the technology to create the modern world to become what they are now. They're all tech companies.
All the biggest companies are all tech companies, yeah. And yes, they have accumulated a lot of capital, but that's a function of them having a lead on knowledge.
It came downstream of the knowledge.
Well, also companies like Google, was it what's his face talked about how they were set up using government money anyway.
A lot of them are, yeah.
Yeah, a lot of them were already started by the government.
Well, a lot of them won contracts and stuff, and so on. But yeah, I mean, the Blockbuster v Netflix thing is, okay, if you go back to 2005, Blockbuster had, whatever it was, something like 25,000 stores around the world, 80,000 employees.
An institution.
Yeah, it had all the capital base. Netflix just had a bit of extra code. And with that, they were able to...
Netflix used to deliver DVDs.
They did.
Initially, it wasn't a streaming service.
But that was low capital based. Yeah, and you transition. So, and all the big companies are knowledge based. So I think it is inevitable that the tech pros are just going to take over government, as inevitable as it was that the industrialists and the bankers took over the parliamentary system.
It's literally about productivity and efficiency.
Exactly. Right. But so if knowledge is going to be the second piece, the governing, what's the balancing side of the equation? Who's going to control the people? And on this, it has to be leverage. It has to be who can lever the eyeballs and the attention and the focus and the concerns.
It's not Andrew Tate, is it?
Well, it's going to be influencers. It's going to be people like us.
Oh no!
Literally. Now, I appreciate.
See why adolescence is such an obsession for me now.
I appreciate that this is a little bit self-referential in the same way
TikTokers are ruling the world.
Well, yes, I know that, what was it, Aristotle or Socrates basically thought philosopher kings should be in charge.
It was Plato.
Plato, right, okay. And then Curtis Yarvin thinks that Californian tech bros should be in charge. And here I am saying that...
You think that you should be in charge.
Well, yes, but I do think I'm essentially correct on this, because what is the system that we've got at the moment? So I come back, we started with... Nobody has their first choice as their MP, right? Maybe some people in Rupert Lowe's and Nigel Farage's constituency would consider them the first choice.
I mean, you could suggest that sort of 30% of people in every constituency who vote Labour are getting their first choice if you've got a Labour MP.
Yeah, but no, but they're getting their first choice of party. They're not getting their first choice of person.
Sure.
Yeah, it's just whoever the party decides to stand in that area.
Yeah.
Yes. So... what I'm suggesting is we have the technology to easily implement something much closer to a direct democracy system. Now, I don't actually think we want to go with direct democracy.
Oh, really? Why not?
Well, because most people aren't interested and they're not going to take the time to study these things.
That's the worst reason. No,
Go on then.
the reason we don't know what direct democracy is because direct democracies are bonkers.
Right.
Because people believe bonkers things. Like, remember, something like 50% of people are conspiracy theorists. Right, in some way, as in the
Oh yeah, the moon landing stuff. Yeah,
you don't want to put the Great Search for Bigfoot up to vote.
I mean, I do, but that's also one of the points I don't, because okay, fine, Great Search for Bigfoot's a good idea, but what this reveals is that essentially the public at large are very susceptible to demagoguery, right? And so,
hang on, what Harry's section?
We already know this.
Parliament is susceptible to demagoguery, or whatever the word you use.
Well, no, Parliament isn't susceptible. They want this, right? They want adolescents, right?
How is it worse?
Because this
if
is-
we spent our time on Bigfoot as opposed to adolescents.
Well, because
I'd say Bigfoot's a much more noble cause.
it's not about Bigfoot though. It's about look how people have been propagandized about Ukraine, right? So
right.
A successful demagogue can easily drag you into wars very, very efficiently. Right? It's actually very easy to get people to drum up for this and to against what's actually
but
good for the country as well.
under our current system, people will vote for people who say we won't drag you into a war, and then they get dragged into a war anyway.
That is true.
Yes.
So it might just be the whole democracy thing is
I agree.
yes in the
I'm not
first
saying
place,
there aren't issues
and
with
that the
democracy.
people in charge will do whatever they
Right,
want
and if
anyway.
you think about our current...
But a representative democracy sort of softens the blow of direct democracy, and
it helps the medicine go down.
it resists the excesses of it, right? Because in a direct democracy,
Yes.
if we have a direct democracy, it's literally the most popular guy who makes the point, right? And again, Andrew Tate is way more popular than every politician in this country.
So I am suggesting a representative system. I'm simply making the point that we have the technology that it actually is viable to have a direct democracy. There's no reason why you couldn't.
I'm not sure we should though.
Yeah, I agree. I'm simply making the point that I have considered it and dismissed it.
It's because we will literally be run by Love Island.
Yes.
Love Actually, or whatever.
I'm
Love
simply making the point that it is possible
might
to
be
do
better
it.
than what we have
And
right
to
now.
be fair, the Dino Reich might be better.
The
than what we have.
Dinoocracy,
Yeah.
yeah.
Because you could have an app on your phone, and every time
by public taxpayer expense for everyone.
you could have an app on your phone where every time a bill came through Parliament,
gotta
each
vote.
individual got to vote on it.
Yeah.
I think most people wouldn't. Most people would rather delegate that over to somebody else. And
The thing is, you could always take that as consent anyway. If you didn't vote
Could
for
do.
it, then you just agreed with whatever the outcome is.
or if you don't get quorum, it doesn't go through, which would be even better because then nothing would ever happen.
Oh, yeah.
But anyway, so I do agree with the point with a representative system. But the problem we've got at the moment is very centralised parties, and basically they've become more gatekeepers than anything else.
100%.
Yeah, their entire job is to keep out people who have views that they don't want.
Yeah, which is why I'm kind of laughing at the idea that Rupert Lowell joined the Conservatives. No.
So the solution is you let voters delegate to the individuals that they actually trust, right? We break the link with representation from geography, because I don't think we need that anymore. There was a time when the concerns of a man from Winchester were largely the concerns of the other men from Winchester. Right? It's not the case anymore. I've got neighbours who are bonkers. I've got one guy down the road who put up a Ukraine flag for 6 months.
Yeah.
Right, his
Got
concerns,
Palestine flag.
yeah, his concerns are not my concerns. My network of influence of concerns are built up online, and they're geographically spread out. Right, so we don't need that link with geography for your national layer anymore. I have taken into consideration the local level as well.
Would it not be a goal of anybody who wants to go back to a more wholesome Britain, or to push us forward to a more wholesome Britain, to try to decouple politics from this kind of national globalist kind of mindset, and say no, your concerns should be in your local constituency, in your
No,
local area.
that's what the local level is for. Right, so let me get to it because we're 20 minutes in and I haven't got to it yet. Right, so first thing I did is I needed to work out what I had to work with. So basically, I took how much we spend on democracy. So this is not ministers. This is not this is not the executive. This is purely what we spend on the democracy layer, the representation layer at the moment.
So you're not including the 500,000 civil servants.
No, all of that is that. This is purely the democracy layer. Okay, so I added up all the costs. Yeah, there we go. You can check my maths if you want to go through it. I'm going to skim through it now. Blah 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 blah. Oh yeah, and I did local as well. So basically, we're spending 1.6, almost 1.7 billion on the democracy layer at the moment, and that's purely the legislative function, and that splits
That's
out
at least 3 days of NHS spending.
Yes, that breaks out to about a billion for the national level.
It's literally 1% of the NHS spending.
Yes, so it is quite tiny, and about 2/3 of that for the local lever. So that's what I've got to work with to design a new system, right?
Yep.
So what I'm thinking
The
is you need-
NHS costs more, 100 times more.
This is going to
than
be
democracy.
a 3-hour segment, Terry. If you don't let me get through
I'm
it.
just finding it for the calculation.
That is totally true.
Right. So basically what I'm suggesting is that you basically get to allocate your vote to the person that you want. Now, I've got my budget for that, and I've set up certain tiers. I don't have time to go through it, but basically I set up certain levels. Office stipend, I'm not going to go through that as well. Again, limited time. So you get to directly elect your influencer who's going to represent you, okay? And you pay them per vote. So if you've got a local representative, you can afford to pay them £14 per vote, right? And that means that you can have a low-level representative who on a particular issue, like a local park or hospital or something, who can get 500 votes. They're a local representative in your local council, right? And you can afford to pay them 10 grand. But if you get 15,000 votes, you're up to 200 grand, right? So this becomes a serious...
I reckon I could get 50,000 votes. What do I get?
Well, no, I'll come to you.
Oh, okay.
You'll actually mention later on, right? So,
okay.
But this makes being a representative a serious profession.
Yeah.
And also, it's a very entry level thing. You could have a retired person who gets into this, gets a small number of votes.
Again.
Yeah, and they get a nice little supplement. Yeah. But also, a young person coming into this can get into the representation game. Okay, but it scales nicely with the more impact that you have. Okay, now look at it on the national level. Okay, so I've proposed a smaller minimum there. You need to get at least 5,000 votes. And again, what I'm envisaging is not a parliamentary system where you all stand up and get indoctrinated into things. This can be done digitally, it can be done from home offices, although in fact I think what would happen a lot of the time is people would start to pull together in places like this where they would discuss ideas between them. So you wouldn't have political parties, you'd have much closer to what influencers do at the moment, which they form networks of like-minded people.
Basically.
Yes, you sort of come together. But again, here...
Podcasts, perhaps.
Government by podcast, says podcasters.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. So, and look, you can afford to spend £21 per vote by simply reorganising the structure. So again, it's massively attractive. You only need 5,000 votes as a rep under this system, and you're earning 350 grand a year.
Bloody hell.
You could easily afford to run an office on that and do all the rest of it.
Yeah.
But it actually incentivises you to make that sort of direct connection, right? Up to and let's say because I want to limit it because you don't want thousands of them, and you probably want to cap it because you want diversity. Otherwise, you just have 3 MPs. It'll be Jeremy Clarkson and Andrew Tate or something, and whoever.
I'd like to see how they come up with policy.
Yes,
I mean, to be honest with you, I could think of worse ways of governing. Right.
No, I've been thinking this through. I'm going to develop this idea. I'm just throwing it out there at the beginning while I'm developing this idea. But so you get up to 150,000. You're earning almost 2 million a year as a representative. Now, I think I would put some restrictions in place, like no stock trading and stuff, and regular audits and things like that.
Well, one of the incentives of paying them a massive wage like that would be a disincentive for actually taking backroom dealings because you're already rich.
Well, yes, and because there's no incentive to try and do all the lobbying shit.
Although you would probably still have to put a lot of rules in place because that could just be used for money to do even more backroom.
Well, if you want to sign up for this, you're going to get audited every year and for 10 years afterwards. Is this a deal that you want to sign up for? So it really incentivizes the representative. And it links. You get to oh bugger! You press the wrong thing there. Right now, actually, this is not wildly out of line because people might say, "Oh, we can't."
It's got the largest electorate.
Yeah. So the Isle of Wight already has a situation where it's got over 100,000 people being represented by one MP. And Harry, do you want to pronounce that for me?
Nope.
Right. Somewhere in probably Wales or something has a constituency with only 20,000 people.
No, isn't that going to be Scottish? Or
it could be Scottish.
Northern Irish, maybe.
Oh, it
says Western Isles, so just say the Western Isles.
Okay, somewhere, right. Anyway, so some bloody island somewhere has an electorate of 20,000. Right. So we already have a system where you have wildly disproportionate. Except in my system, if you've got 150,000 votes, you are on a weighted basis. That's how much you're casting. Whereas you've got 5,000 if you've got a niche interest, trans veganism or something, there'll be somebody who gets elected on that platform. You're only casting 5,000 weighted votes when it comes to this system. Okay, right. Oh bugger! I keep pressing the wrong button. Right, here we go. So then I thought I'd have a look at who would you end up as with MPs in this system. Now, this isn't entirely accurate, right? Because we don't know all of their followers are British. And some of these people overcount. So people who follow Simon Cowell might also follow Ricky Gervais and so on. But it gives you a broad idea as who you could reasonably expect.
I want Piers Morgan to have an enormous amount of power in the British government.
He kind of does, doesn't he?
Yes, and I would
But on the
like
plus side,
to take
Andrew
that
Tate
away from him.
But Andrew Tate's got more followers than Piers Morgan. Don't know why you've got him at 4 million. He's got 10 million on Twitter.
Oh, okay. Well, okay, fine.
So are these just Twitter followers that you've taken?
No, I kind of either went to YouTube or Twitter, whichever one was higher.
Oh, okay.
Right, but how much more interesting would this be as a parliament? So Simon Cowell, J.K. Rowling. Now, I don't know whether these people would do it because they might just be too busy with their other thing, but they don't want to do this and they don't want to sign up to the intrusiveness of the audits and stuff like this, right?
Sure.
But you would have a parliament that looks more like this. Jeremy Clarkson. Now, the other clever thing about this is because it's capped at 150,000 votes, you'd be wasting your vote if actually 8 million people voted for Jeremy Clarkson. So you'd incentivise the people to distribute their votes effectively.
That's interesting.
Now, we currently have wasted votes in our current system. We have millions of wasted votes in our current system because if you've got
two-thirds of votes are wasted.
Yes. Yeah, because if you've got a majority of 15,000, well, 14,999 of those wasted.
If you look at just any constituency, like
yes.
the last one, it was Labour, Tories, Reform, right?
Yeah, and all of those are wasted as well.
Yeah, and as well as like Lib Dems and Greens. So yeah.
Right. So what the bugger, I keep pressing. Right, Andrew Tate, James Corden, Russell Brand, Nigel Farage. I don't know who KSI is. Maybe
you don't know who KSI is.
No clue.
No, keep it that way.
Right. Okay. There's you, Carl.
Oh yeah, look at me.
You could be an MP under this system.
Yep.
Tommy, he makes it on. Owen Jones. So I mean, you would have leftists as well.
Yeah. Jeremy Corbyn would be on there. Jeremy Corbyn's
yes,
basically an influence.
Yes. Katie Hopkins, she could be in.
Philip Schofield. So we've not solved one problem with current government.
Yeah. I put Narinda in out of order, but I just wanted to have her next to Lawrence Fox because they would probably both make it in as well. Paul Joseph Watson, Guido Fawkes.
We've got Campbell back in there. Ugh.
Unfortunately, James O'Brien would probably make it.
Yep.
Don't know who Joe Wicks is or Stacey Solomon or Holly Willoughby. I know who
Joe Wicks is literally a fitness influencer who tells you how to get like 15-minute abs. I'd love to see what his policies would be.
15-minute abs? I don't think so.
Wow.
Mind you, if it's only 15 minutes, I'll give it a try and report back. Julie Hartley-Brewer, Rupert Lowe, I think he would make it back in. He's probably one of the very few MPs who would make it back in and under this system.
Oh yeah, most MPs would not make it back in. How many followers do you have to have on social media?
So basically, my system I'm imagining is you'd have some sort of app where you would nominate who your representative is.
Yeah.
So, and then, you'd need a minimum of 5,000, anything over 150,000 was wasted.
Right. Okay, yeah, right.
So if you had something like 300,000 people nominate you would probably then say to them, because you've got an engaged base, actually I only need the first 150, why don't you go and support, bloody Harry or Dan or something like that?
Yeah. You've got 37.7 thousand followers.
Oh, don't worry.
Just about...
No, I'm coming to that.
Oh, all right, okay, all right.
Got Ash Sarkar, Peter Hitchens... he would make it as well, wouldn't he? Dan Hodges, Aaron Bastani, he would make it in. Dominic Cummings. How much of a better parliament would this be, even if it was digital online? Gary's
just a quick thing. You could set this up and just have it virtually legislate, and it wouldn't have any real world effect, but it would be an interesting debating club.
That's a point.
Basically, it's like, look, if you've got.
I don't think anything would get done in this parliament.
Well, no,
probably for the best.
It wouldn't have the power to do anything, but like. Actually, it would be an interesting sort of virtual representation. What would they do as a parliament if they had the option? Right?
But these people actually represent what people want.
Yeah.
These are the people who capture the attention, and these are the people that speak to the concerns of people. Is there any reason why this shouldn't be how it works?
Now, I don't want KSI in parliament.
Well, worse than some of the twats we got there now. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't want any
worse than Diane Abbott.
I don't want any of them in parliament.
I might have spent a bit too much time on them.
We have a lot better representation than they do at the moment.
There we go. You get a mention.
I've only got 37,000 followers.
I know. I rounded to the nearest 10.
Thank you very much. There we go.
Yes.
Both of us. Although I don't necessarily agree with the description there, Dan.
I think I gave you a pretty good description there. Anyway, so the point, this would be such a better way of doing it, because you could have a whole, so you'd have all of these guys presumably, then you'd have a whole bunch of special interests, they'd all vote on it. There's no reason why you need to meet up in Parliament in person anymore. You just don't need to operate on that system. And the other cool thing that it would do as well, and this sort of speaks to your point, Carl, it kind of abolishes the political parties. You wouldn't need them in this system, and they wouldn't work in this system. Instead, you'd have networks. Like, we've got a network that includes like us, but people like Academic Agent and Ed Dutton and a whole bunch Morgoth, a whole bunch of other people. It's kind of a network. We don't directly control each other or anything. We just think along similar lines, and we'll get together every now and again. That's what a political party would look like in this system.
Yeah, because I think that'd be a really nice idea as well. Because I mean, any MP can propose a members' bill. Or have it so that any MP can propose a bill, but if it's ideologically, I propose the communist bill, well, you're going to get hopefully a narrow band of people who agree to that, right? Whereas at the moment, the Labour Party are like Stamp, so it's just like, okay, I don't want that. We can't have a based bill either, because the Labour Party are like, no, out.
Yes. So what I want to try is I'm going to work on this a bit more, but my idea is we need to get to, at some point, be hammering the political class, just like in the early 1800s. They're hammering and saying, hang on, we can't have rotten boroughs anymore. This system, Parliament needs reform. I'm going to work this idea up, and I'm going to get everybody talking about it, and we're going to start hitting, over the next couple of decades, Parliament and saying, you need reform. You need to move over to this new system. Just keep hammering and put them on the defensive.
I need Andrew Tate in there now.
Yes. So anyway, I think that would work. Let me know in the comments if you've spotted any flaws. Not that you will, or tell me just how great an idea it is. And yes, we will move over to this system imminently.
If you would like to watch the full uncut version that is also uncensored, head on over to lotuseaters.com to find out more.